Yeah.
do you have a setup? Where are you?
Well, I should pick my background. So I'm in my office at the University of Kansas.
Wait. Do you have an office space?
Well, so the name on the door is not my name.
Good,
So
good,
technically it's a squat.
good.
Um, but it's Michelle Leon, who's a good friend of mine, and she's this semester the chair of the Jewish Studies program. So she has
Okay.
an office in a different building. So she has this office and she has that office. And the next semester, or in the fall 2025 and spring 2026, she'll be on sabbatical. So I
So
feel
for
like
you got some time.
I'm settling in a little bit. So I've
Yeah.
sort of like I've set up two tiny nooks and I'm gonna do more. But this is my tiny, so I have my I'm so bad at camera.
Okay, I
Uh
recognize that.
my Foreman poster. And then this is also from Brick Ox. The painting is by Greg Thrasher, uh,
Beautiful.
who's a good friend, and he did a gallery show. He was the bassist for Chat Logs, a
Okay,
band I
yeah.
love. And then
What's the
there's
duck?
the duck is a gift from my niece, Zilly, and that's a
Okay.
picture of her in the black and white frame, but it's a middle finger.
Did she choose it? Or
She
did she
chose
paint
it.
it? Oh, she chose it. Okay.
She chose it from this joke shop upstate. She was like, got me a bunch of tiny hands and this duck that's middle finger.
So she gets it.
She gets it.
I'm so free right now with you. Sometimes I'm nervous and I'm stressed. I have no nerves. I've been the nerves have been beaten out of me. So,
Good.
right?
It's important to be nervous. Like I was really nervous yesterday because it was my first day teaching in person. Because I taught three classes on Zoom while I was in New York. And
So what's the class? Go.
it's just voiceover. Um, and I mean, I think it's a fun class. I love voiceover. I think voiceover is a portal to so many other discoveries. Like it's a really cool thing to teach that also people are more excited about than if I taught a class called Portals, like no one would take it. You know what I mean?
I don't think that's true. I think
Okay,
you'd get a different crowd, but I think a lot of people would take portals.
okay. I'm writing that down.
I'm taking portals. Like I think all anybody wants is a portal. So
Yeah, we're in search of portals. I've always been in search of portals since like being obsessed with Narnia. I was like, this could be a
yeah,
portal.
yeah. I mean, of course, that's when closets were instantly exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Okay,
gotta
but
check out this closet.
yeah, well, I don't know where it could lead. Can you just start? Can you just say your name and how we met, and then I'll go somewhere.
Yes.
This is my attempt at trying to structure things because someone told me I need structure. So that's my only thing. So just say your name and how we met, and then we can
And
go.
and I just want to make sure it was Ben Beckley, right? That was who introduced us over
Yeah,
email.
yeah.
Okay, cool. I was like, I'm pretty sure. Okay,
Who
great.
I never met.
Though I think you met briefly outside of the brick next to the dumpster.
No.
My name is Teresa Bukeister, and I met Vanessa via email
Yeah.
initially, because a friend of mine that I've known for a long time, Ben Beckley, was like, "Hey, haven't seen you in a really long time." Probably because of COVID, but also,
Yeah.
life. And was like, "There's a person who applied to this thing that I'm a part of, and they didn't get it, but she's really cool. I've never met her, but I think that her idea is cool, and you should reach out to her." Uh, and I take a recommendation from a friend pretty seriously. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna reach out to this person.
But you didn't. You didn't. You did it for many months. And then I was feeling really bad because, people don't always answer emails. And then I followed up with you and you were like, yes, oh, hey, yeah, okay, let's grab a Zoom. So I harassed you a
Oh my
teeny bit.
God.
Yeah, but
Now I
it's
want to
fine.
go back and look at those emails because in my mind, I remember the Ben email and then I remember meeting you and being like, yeah, come to this show.
Yeah. I
and then
emailed you
hang
and
out.
then you said come to the show.
Oh my God.
But
Okay,
we
thank
zoomed before that. We must
Yeah,
have
we
zoomed
zoomed.
before that.
I should have done my history of Vanessa
No, no.
research before I got
No,
here.
the point is that I stop you and I say you're wrong.
Oh,
This is
hot.
yeah.
Memory is slippery.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was cool. So I mean the connection between the two of us was because of Ben not curating you into something.
Yeah.
And then the thing that I really remember though is you came to this thing and you hung out for a second, then you left, and then you came back. And
Yeah.
that was cool. And
Did
then
you think it was
that
weird?
started everything.
Did you think it was weird?
No.
Okay. Okay, good. It was and I think I told you I think I told you that and it was raining, which made it even more symbolic because it would have made sense to leave because I was already in the rain, but I was like, no, go back. Go back.
Mhm.
Because it felt
That's so
good.
cinematic. That's so like stories that we read as kids. Like, if I don't turn around now, my whole life might be different. And it's
Yeah.
raining.
And it's raining and it's Brooklyn and it's just it's so
There's just like a cool
real.
group of people hanging out talking about stuff. Yeah.
Oh, it was um I'm Tanya's. Tanya did a show. Was it? Oh, I'm just banging the
It
mic
was
right now.
Tanya Markart.
Markhart, yeah.
And it was Alessandro Magana. They did a gestating baby. Alessandro did a sort of like spoken word thing with that music stand that he spray painted, which so now we still have it, but it's not really usable as a music stand. And then we moved to the back of Brick Ox, and Tanya did the thing about dance and sort of researching this type of sort of masculine dance,
Hmm.
um, Hungarian, I believe.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was so cool.
It was
Oh, what a
uh,
cool group.
it was so fucking cool. And I thought their show was amazing and very smart and very beautiful. And it's I think it's a little bit, I mean, it's a very beautiful moment and a very beautiful story, but there's something a teeny bit sad, I think, about the fact that I guess it was like what, 2, 3 years ago or something like that. So I was in my late 30s at this point, and I think it's crazy that that's like one of the only times in my life that I've been like, this is a beautiful, creative community that I feel comfortable in instantly. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but I mean it is a rarer thing than one would hope.
Hmm.
And I'm
Hmm.
definitely experiencing that now in Kansas, having like left New York for very valid reasons. But being like the main thing that I regret leaving is a community that is that vibrant and welcoming and weird and diverse and like so many different kinds of people that all feel okay connecting. Like it's a bunch of people like myself free, phones and stuff. I was always that person just like smoking a cigarette, hoping somebody else would, and I still do that. But hoping someone would come bum off me so I could have a conversation because I didn't know how. Uh, and some of those are the most interesting people, but it's just hard to connect because we don't know how to do it ourselves. So I think it's maybe that's part of the magic of the space. Also, the space was blessed by Christina Pitter when we got in there.
So, okay, so back up to what the space is, what you were doing there, because this is when I met you. You were creative director of the Brick Ox, and this happened before the pandemic? Right
Mm-mm.
after the pandemic.
Yep.
Yeah,
Well, right in it.
in it. Okay, so that's where I met you. That's how I was introduced to you. So just start from there, and then we can go all crazy. But
Go.
yeah, yeah.
So at that point, that was 2023. And some people might refer to that as post-pandemic. I wouldn't, because people still getting COVID. But I basically became the artistic director
Artistic director. Okay.
of, titles are weird, of the Brick, January 1st, 2020. And it was rough. And I had agreed to do it and I was interested in doing it because I couldn't afford real estate myself. I'd been looking for a couple of years, being like, I think that I have the skill set to run a space because I'd been doing other stuff. And I had the what I perceived
To run a theater space.
to run a theater space,
Mhm.
a sort of multidisciplinary performance space. Um, and so this opportunity was there. It was an opportunity that was also like not quite an opportunity because there was a ton of debt, which I didn't
Yeah.
know. But I knew that there are a lot of things to be addressed, and that the people running it were like burnt out, not wanting to run it anymore. So I took over January 1st, 2020. Um, ready to just like,
Prime time. But
woo.
yeah.
And there were things that went well right away. Like I had a week to renovate the space, which meant that I raised some money and got some friends to help me make it accessible and sort of strip the grid and make the tech work and stuff like that. Um,
That was in the Brick?
yeah, in the
Okay.
brick. Uh, so we were sort of hit the ground running and then pandemic. And then struggle, struggle, struggle. We had like $1,000 in the bank on April 1st, 2020. I was like, oh, well, we tried. But fast forward to 2022, and we were in this place where it was like, okay, we've been doing stuff and we've been learning a lot, and we're like more connected to artists and community than ever before,
Hmm.
even through a fucking pandemic. And then it was like, but we need more space.
Hmm.
Like we had started doing shows so much that like I didn't have anywhere to work, and do all the stuff that would make it
Because you were
possible.
working out of the Brick. The Brick, which is,
Yeah.
we'll just say, the main theater space, the larger sort of theater space.
Larger, it's
Larger,
a
yeah.
like 50 seat uh brick. It's clever. It's made out of
Yeah.
bricks. But yeah, so it's a bigger space, but it's literally the room that you perform
Yeah.
in, the bathroom, the tiny, tiny dressing room. There's
Yeah.
nowhere to be.
Mm-mm.
And so I was like, I need an office if I'm going to keep doing all this. Like, I can't commute from my apartment that was next to Brooklyn College. Like I can't work down there and then immediately be in Williamsburg, you
Hmm.
know. And I can't afford to just like set up shop at M Noodle every day and
Yeah.
hotspot my computer.
Yeah.
So we were looking for an office and also sort of an auxiliary space, because when I'd taken over the brick, I still had Vital Joint, which we'll probably get to that later, but it was a basement space on Meserole Street that I'd had for 4 years. And it had an office and it had a recording studio that we built out of this like gambler's den that was in there before us. And we did like the Ladies Who Ranch did a weekly mic there. We did a lot of alt comedy, alt music, and it created an extra space for things to happen to support the brick. And then we lost that during the pandemic. So it was like, we need that back and it needs to be close. And then so we found this spot and we were like, this is it. This is it. This is a huge risk, but let's do it. I feel like the risk will pay off.
Hmm.
Uh, and it was definitely like, oh, I don't know if I needed more work at that point, but I also needed to be able to be closer to like, there are a lot of things that it did that were important for us, and it also created a lot more work for me. So by the time I met you, I was severely overworked for years at this point, sort of
Hmm.
like uh, my capacity had diminished greatly. But as I think you could probably attest, like I still had a great love and passion for what I was doing. But my
I
capability,
cannot that if that was you weakened, I can't imagine you strong. Like I can't imagine. I can't. The amount to which I witnessed you working at made me very tired instantly. So I mean when I met you, I mean obviously when I met you, which was a couple of years ago, I could see the stress, like I could see the unsustainability of the situation, but it was just kind of amazing to see it all work. I mean,
And the juice of it all was the people in the community. And like I know that other people say that, but I don't like you said, it's sort of special,
yeah.
you know? And I've been a part of a lot of different communities, but yeah, there's something really and still is alive and vital about the people that found themselves on that stretch of block between Leonard and Union on Metropolitan Avenue. Just really special stuff.
And did the legacy of Vital Joint, because I don't think I knew that in my head that when you started the brick, you also were running Vital Joint and then did you lose Vital Joint because of the pandemic?
Yeah.
And then Brick Ox kind of took that space in a bit. So like the legacy of what you were doing there carried in and the community of there and it all sort of iterated
Yeah,
a little
and
bit.
there are different places, like when people like when a lot of the comedians came to see Brick Ox for the first time who had done stuff at Vital Joint. And so like the Ladies Who Ranch,
Yeah.
Simple Town, River Ramirez, Tim Platt, like that whole crew of all the alt comedians, Anna Fabriga, they're like this place is nice because Vital Joint was like we'd it was in a basement that constantly smelled terrible because
Mhm.
you'd basically go down to the basement, one door would lead to Vital Joint, the other would lead to where all the shit from the building went.
Like poo
Um
poo?
Poo-poo.
Wait, there was a room for poo poo?
Yeah, we called it the poop room.
Okay, that makes sense. I
And
didn't
we're like,
realize that was
go
a
to the poop
thing.
room. Oh my gosh. Like, and it was one of the many fraught things with the sort of difficult man who thought that he could fix things that was sort of our super. Um, but
Difficult
it
man.
was basically like there was a show that was a really packed show where I had to like tuck my caftan into my bra and like shovel human shit with my bare hands into this pipe so that the room wouldn't just overflow with shit.
So that the poo poo from the poo poo room didn't come into your room.
Yeah.
That seems very dangerous, just like health wise, also.
Yeah, and we kept trying to address it and like I knew what the issue was and this dude was like, "You don't know what the issue is. You're not a man," basically. And I've dealt with misogyny my whole life and this was just on a level that we were just like, dude. It was me and Ryan Downey running this space pretty much and like and it was just like, okay, Ryan, can you go tell like be my bro whisperer so that you have beard and
Talk poo
penis,
poo.
they will listen to you. This is how to fix poo-poo room.
Yeah.
Ah, the amount of time I've wasted in my life having to speak through somebody else to have respect and just get a poo-poo room fixed. Ridiculous. But so that space, so it smelled like poo-poo, so we always had incense going. I was always cleaning the poop room. Um, that was a huge part of my life for four
Yeah.
years.
That's the glamour of the showbiz world that you
Yeah.
were.
But still wearing a caftan every second.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, and then, like the walls were black. It was in this basement. It was like really small and weird. And so people
Hmm.
enter into this like first floor, like beautiful gallery space with my office, like with a deep purple accent wall and like art all over the walls. They were like,
That's the ox.
wow, that's the
Yeah,
ox. So
yeah.
all the Vital Joint people were like,
Step
wow,
up.
this is
They're
fancy.
moving up. They're moving up.
Yeah.
Um, so can I ask you a question that's gonna feel maybe ignorant, but I think it's an important one. As someone who came into the scene, because I come from the film world. There are worlds, there are scenes, undeniable. And I would not consider myself like a part of the theater community. Like that's I now more so like for the past few years, but before that, no. And so when I was there and after seeing work and sort of like trying to understand the map of the scenes, um, I was like, oh, okay, so this is like the experimental DIY alt thing as you described it, or as people described it. Can you talk about the differences between what you were creating and what you were doing, and maybe other aspects of the theater or performance scene? And what I also will say, sorry, I'm going all over the place, is that what I saw in Ox and at Brick was like the intersection of like clearly people who were sort of like more alternative performance, but also not. And I think that also kind of brought worlds together. But then I also understood that there was different worlds. And I also know from our conversation about funding that there are different worlds and modes of support for these different worlds. And I think that's really interesting as someone who's like not doesn't totally get it. So I don't know what you want to say about that, but just like where you saw your stuff fitting in and just like just go for that. Just there's a lot there.
There's a lot there. And I'm hilariously going to start with funding because it's the least interesting thing to me, but it's also become something that I'm way more comfortable talking about in the last 5 years than I was before, uh, because uh, I was always uncomfortable talking about money because I felt like I didn't have the right pedigree. I didn't grow up with money. I didn't go to a fancy school. I haven't gone to grad school. All of that stuff that makes you feel sort of lesser and repeated occurrences throughout your life where you're like, ooh, I don't fit in here. I guess I'll just go over here.
Mhm.
Um, and so, but I'm way more comfortable talking about it now. And one thing that I find really interesting about having a sort of multidisciplinary space is in my head, I was like, all those places that support dance and film and theater and performance art and comedy and music will support us because we do all of it. In reality, they don't because we don't focus on the one thing.
Mhm.
Um, and I find that really sad.
Mhm.
And I'm interested in figuring out how to change that.
Mhm.
It's more difficult to run a multidisciplinary space because artists need really different things.
Yeah.
And it would be much easier if we just ran a comedy venue or just a dance space or just a theater space, because even though within those categories, there is a lot of variation. If you open it up to all the categories, you're basically running like 20 different spaces in
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
But the value of doing that, of bringing people together to see stuff that they wouldn't otherwise see, to experience art outside of their practice, I think is so important.
Yeah.
And it makes people just like more interesting to hang out with, but also more interesting as artists. Um, People who get too in the head of their practice, I find to be pretty dull. Almost like they're in the solitary confinement of their practice. And it's just like, oh, that's sort of dangerous, and not that cool. So yeah, so I think it's a bummer that it's not well supported. But I'm hoping that that changes and that maybe I can be a part of that change.
Mhm.
But I get why it's confusing to people. A lot of my projects are confusing to people
Yeah.
until they have a chance to explain them, and then they're like, oh, we get what you're up to. Um, because I am like in a weird way a total formalist, I like things to make sense.
Yeah.
But they make sense in a way that I guess doesn't fit into existing containers, but it does make sense. There's a lot of logic to it.
Do you think that, yeah, and there's so much seriousness to it, like formal seriousness to it.
I'm very
Absolutely. You're
serious,
very,
but
of
I
course
also
you're
like
very
really
serious.
stupid shit.
But I guess that's the thing. So when you say people are confused, do you mean, or maybe both of these, that they're confused by the work itself because it's too crazy or wild, and or confused by the programming, or both?
Both.
Yeah.
Like people will the confused people are just generally confused. Like there's
Yeah,
nothing you can do about it.
absolutely.
I learned this from like working in various like kinds of public facing stores, like graveyard shifts at a gas station. I was a manager at the drama bookshop, at the Strand, at Housing Works. Um, and like people go into a bookstore and they don't read signs. They can't read a sign to tell them where the bathroom is. Like that's a very odd thing to be confused by, you
Yeah.
know. So there's nothing you can really do, regardless of how many signs you have or how clear the font is or what kind of commercial you have or what kind of awning you have or what kind of greeter at the door. People are going to be confused. So just accept it as a
Yeah.
reality. But
Yeah.
um, a lot of stuff that is corporate, capitalistic, commercial
Yeah.
seeks to make people less confused.
Yes.
And by doing so, dulls it to a point of such idiocy that I can't believe that people consume it and think it's like smart stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh.
Yeah.
So there's that. So I think that it's sort of about the package and the content.
Hmm.
The package is confusing because they'll be like, I came here for a comedy show. This is a comedy space and only a comedy space. And then they come back and they see something like On Set with Theda Bara and they're like, wait, what?
Hmm.
And then they come back and they see something like
And Terabang even just as
Caravan.
a, yeah.
Yeah, you know, or You Are the Dream, which just closed this past weekend. And so I always tell people, and I probably told you this, like, come see three things and then think about the relationship between them. And then you can start to understand maybe what we're after. And if you're not interested in doing that, then that's also okay. Come to one thing and don't think about it when you leave. I also love mindless activities. But if somebody really wants to understand the curation, then they would see at least three things and then think about why those things want to exist in the same space and also how they're different and how the the similarities allow them to be in that space, and the differences allow the space to really be welcoming to all kinds of people instead of just one. Um, and then, like content wise, some of the stuff I think is very not, well, it's all experimental in a way. Like there
Hmm.
are no one is doing something that is a published play. Like not even somebody being like, I'd like to do Genet's The Maids. And it's like, no, like that's not what we're doing here. And
Yeah.
I love if somebody wants to do that. That's great. But that's not what the brick is doing. So the experiment is in the newness. But there's also a whole machinery around new plays. That's not what we're a part of. Um, New play machine is many things, but the main thing is really to generate plays for celebrities to be in off Broadway and
Hmm.
maybe have it transfer to on Broadway and then have those playwrights become writers for TV.
Hmm.
Like that's the new play machine.
Yeah.
And I go to that stuff and I can sometimes enjoy it and I get what they're doing.
Yeah.
That's not what we're doing,
Yeah.
but both are new.
Yeah.
And then there's the experiment and, well, what are you trying to do? Are you new at something? Are you asking a question you've never asked before? Are you doing a collaboration you've never done before? Are you uh, taking something that you had made before and breaking it apart? What is the experiment of your actual project in
Yeah.
the place in your career that you're at? Which this gets
Yes.
the people that feel like super off the beaten path, deep fringe, and people that are like sort of established. All of those people can have an experiment that they want to do. And all
Hmm.
of those people can have difficulty finding a place that will let them do it.
Yeah.
So that's why I love to have somebody who is established try something that they can only try at the brick. And somebody new who's just out of college and is like, I just want a shot to make something,
Yeah.
uh, and everything in between.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like very trusting, but not just trusting for some sort of like, oh, I want to trust people, but trusting in the sense of what can come from that and valuing. It's valuing it, right? It's valuing what is not valued in a lot of spaces now.
Well, and it's because value is different than like or dislike.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is something that I feel like I'm trying to trace my own relationship to.
Yeah.
Um, because growing up, I knew like I would start to identify the things that I liked, and in my mind, it was synonymous with value.
Hmm.
Um, and then I also came up in a time where it was like cool to be edgy and mean. And so if there's something I didn't like, I was like a master of like a sick takedown,
Huh.
and that like, and there's still stuff that I will, like that I don't like, and I can talk about why I don't like it.
Hmm.
Um, and I can talk about also why something has value, or in my perspective, maybe is lacking in value.
Hmm.
Um, but my personal taste is different than what I find it to be valuable all the time. And sort of
Hmm.
where those things overlap, uh, is really interesting. So it's sort of like, it's sort of like the Matrix in the New Yorker or in New York Magazine, where it's like despicable, highbrow, lowbrow.
Hmm. Hmm.
And mine is sort of like dislike, value, no value.
Okay. Okay.
The things that like resonate with me the most, that I probably remember the most and like move me, are the things that are high value that I like.
Yeah.
The things I dislike the most, that I'm just like mad that they exist, are the things that have no value and that I also dislike. But there are things that I dislike that have value. Uh,
Hmm.
and so I sort of over time have come to think about things, at least that's like one level of the way that I think about curation, and also the stuff that I see. Um, so the stuff that's in the space or the opportunity that I'm helping to curate,
Yeah.
stuff that I see outside of that. That sort of matrix is part of how I think about it.
And so I very much understand that. And I think maybe that also just comes from spending a long time in an arts industry and moving from, I don't want to say younger, more juvenile or like immature way of being like, I like this, I don't like this, to this isn't for me, but I respect this form of like creating, or something about this is just art making that is a kind of experimental art making that is great. Maybe I just don't like the themes or a certain form. Like, I don't know. It just feels like a kind of growing up thing to me. And it's
Yeah.
honestly, I don't like most things, but I don't think that most things shouldn't exist. Some of them, some of them shouldn't. But like, just like more specifically, this is kind of on what we were talking about, but so there's what you like, what you value, and then we have a value system within the arts world, within the theater space, dance, film, of like what is valuable from like a marketability or more commercial standpoint. In all of that, there's you and there's what the brick does and what Brick Ox does and what you've like tried to grow. And what would you say are like the values and the building blocks of that? And I know you sort of mentioned like experimentation, and you've mentioned that can happen at different points of people's career. But I mean, if there's anything else besides that almost like what are like the building blocks of what you did? Like what do you think those are? And that could be like practical or not practical because there is something like it's not just an experimental space, like spaces. There's a lot to it, so just I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, well, and I think that's the thing that I try to encourage people to think about that it when when people think about running a space or anything, publishing a book or opening a restaurant or producing a film,
Yeah.
um, they're usually at first coming at it from the perspective that they have, which is going to be limited, right? There's no way it can be as expansive as the industry itself or as the like everyone doesn't know the questions they need to ask until they're uh right in front of them. Um, but the reasons that I like running a space is as multidimensional as you can get, right? Because you're inviting people into it. Unless it's a pop-up space, you're doing it every day. Whether or not the space is public or private on those days, you're still inviting people into your space. And to do that is uh, its first layer of responsibility. So even before you get to the art stuff, which is really important because that's also sort of why anyone would want to be there,
Mhm.
you have to think about how to welcome people into your space. Um, is it is it accessible? Is it safe? Is it safe physically? Like don't daisy chain a bunch of power that will start a fire. Is it safe emotionally and psychologically? How do you feel about people who've violated the trust of a community or a person? How do you feel about the police? How do you feel about all ages or various rules that exist to keep people safe, but those rules also exist to keep people out. Like,
Mhm.
how do you feel about all that stuff? And how does your space reflect that? Um, and that goes from the toilet to the tech booth to the front door,
Mhm.
like all of those things are important. And also a space literally can't be for everyone, you know? So you also sort of have to just accept that in order to do anything.
Mhm.
You have to think about all these things and then you have to understand like who you're excluding and who you're not and
Mhm.
why.
Mhm.
Then you can think about the art. What do you want to do here? Is it possible? On what level is it possible? What do you have to offer? What do you not have to offer? How does what you have to offer influence who's allowed to make stuff? Um, and then once you think about that, then you have to think about not only how to say yes to people, but how to say no to people. Um, and I think that rejection is such a hard part of just existing, you know, not just in your chosen artistic field or
Mhm.
career path, but just as a human being. Um, that I feel like knowing that we're gonna say no a lot and receive no a lot, we could all get really fucking better at it. Like, I don't understand why it's not a thing that we work on because it's inevitable, like you have to learn how to say yes, but you also have to learn how to say no. And so I think that's been a thing that I have put a lot of time and energy into. And that other people don't value that. So it's hard to do. It takes time, but it's worth it. And I can't convince people of that. Um, People who have gotten a no from me are convinced of it. Uh, but other people I'm talking to about running spaces or curation are like, I don't have time to do that.
I mean, what's kind of interesting about valuing rejection and also what the Brick and Brick Ox did or does is that it's kind of like, besides just taking the time to have thoughtful feedback, or not even feedback, but a thoughtful rejection, or even something like Ben did, which was a thoughtful introduction. which is quite frankly just being like, I can't open this door for you, but I can open this window for you to meet somebody else because I think that it's worthwhile, is the best rejection I ever got and is probably better than doing something with them, right? But is is like there's like yes and no. Yes, you got in, no, you didn't. But there's also what you did, which is create community, which is not a yes or a no. It's a hey, here's the world. Like you're gonna get yeses or nos, and you're gonna deal with that how you do. But when you create that middle space, which is I think what you do, is it becomes like sometimes you get in, sometimes you don't, blah, blah, blah. You get the things you do, you don't. But you also create the world for people to meet each other and for people to just be and to just, it's like a middle ground because so much of the other institutions and so much of the art world is about just like you're in or you're out.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, part of it is it's like two things. It's yard and it's table. Uh like can you sit down at a table with someone or can you hang out in a yard with someone? And a lot of art spaces don't have yards or tables. And so it's like what are other ways to bring people together?
mhm,
Um but a lot of the spaces that have been the most formative for me, I think immediately of the Ontological Theater in St. Mark's Church. Um, there was the courtyard. And while it wasn't like a constant hang, it was for the people working there. And then also once a year, there was a summer cookout, and everyone would hang out in this yard, and it'd start early and it'd end late, and you could be there. And I sort of did my thing where I just stay in one place, and people that are good at mingling go off and mingle, and
mhm,
people that want to sit down and stay in one place for a while come to me. So
yeah,
it was great. I didn't have to force myself to do anything I didn't want to do other than show up. Um, and it created a space outside of the art, outside of the
mhm,
performance,
yeah,
outside of the thing for us to be. And then Silent Barn had a yard, and that was great.
mhm,
Like a lot of relationships that I built that sort of have that are still a part of what I'm doing now are because of the art at Silent Barn.
mhm,
More than the like 500 punk shows that I saw. And I'm glad that those were happening because those are the reason that people were in the yard.
yeah,
But the yard allowed us to actually talk.
yeah.
And
Which
so
is
Brick Ox was sort of like the yard, is the
yeah,
table. It's like come
yeah,
sit at the table, have a snack, have a drink, sit here and talk. It's not a loud bar. You can hang out here if you're sober. You can hang out here if you're in high school or if you're 80.
yeah,
Like, you know.
yeah. Yeah, well that makes sense, which is also what you've been saying, which is right that it's all of the things and the art, which are the things I guess that make it make sense. It's all of the things, it's all of the hard things
Yeah,
that
I mean,
aren't
if the
actually
art
that
was
hard.
bad, if the art was like super bad, then people would be like, "No, I'm good." And
Yeah.
sometimes it's not like, and sometimes you can't hit all the time, and like no one can. But
Yeah.
the art is always a risk, and it's always exciting, and it's always uh there's always a good reason to show up, and then there's
Yeah.
also a good reason to stay and hang out.
Yeah. So that I think is a good way into New York City. So you started in Kansas and then you were in New York City and now you're back in Kansas. And so much has happened in between. So I guess, I mean, you can kind of tackle it however you want, but I would be very curious to just now that you're back, is there anything between what you had in your mind when you went to New York, then New York to back here, that is what you'd want to share or that it's like notable in terms of just like what you've been through and what New York City like has meant?
Oh, it's wild.
Sorry, big one.
Big one. stuff I'm processing right now.
Sorry, trigger you.
No, no, this is a good trigger. I mean, I think there are a few things with that. I mean, I think that uh if it's possible for people to leave at least for a period the place where they grew up, I think that's a really important thing to do. Um, because otherwise, your scope is just it's very small, but we all
Yeah.
affect each other. And so if you keep your scope small, but you have the ability to vote, you have the ability to make decisions that affect other people, having a very small insular scope can be not dishonest or like unfair, but it can be problematic on a larger scale. Um, I always knew, and I think a lot of wandering spirits feel this way. I always knew that I was going to move to New York. And my fourth
Mhm.
grade school picture, the as photographer was like, "You look like you're dressed for New York City." And I dressed for the reality that I wanted.
Yeah.
Um, which in fourth grade was hats and vests,
Oh,
baby.
baby, hats and vests. Nothing says New York like a hat and a vest. It's very good. Very good.
And no one was doing that in my class. Um, but I always knew that I wanted out for a variety of reasons. And it's not because I actually knew what I would do or how I would survive or even what it was actually like, but it was a little bit of a dream of another place, which I think is also a pretty common thing for uh I guess probably for young people, definitely for young people dealing with some shit. Um,
Yeah.
and it's sort of a cool thing to think about. And then as I got older and I had a little bit more autonomy and the ability to choose where I go, not without struggle,
Mhm.
but I could say I'm doing this. There are other places that I was considering, because I basically just wanted out of Kansas.
Mhm.
Um, but I'm glad that it was New York.
Yeah.
Um, and it probably would have happened anyway if I'd gone to like DC or Chicago first or something. I probably would have ended up in New York for some reason. Um, and I'm very glad to be back. A lot of people are making a very uh apt observation that it's very Wizard of Oz. I've woken up from my time in Oz and I recognize the people that I see in front of me and I'm happy to see them. And I'm also like, does anyone understand what I just went through? Was
Mhm.
that a dream or was it real? You know, were all of these things that shaped me as a person and challenged me and scared me and taught me how to feel, was
Mhm.
that real or was that just a dream? Uh, that's sort of a wild thing to think about.
Yeah.
Um, because here it's just, uh, I feel very comfortable here. I feel very at home here, but in a very different body than when I left. I'm literally in the University of Kansas right now, uh, older than some of the professors that I had when I was a student, being like, oh my God, what do these students think of me? How do I act here? Like, how are things different than I was here? And how is, how do I feel about that? And like, yeah, it's a very interesting return. But I will say, I will qualify, it's not my hometown. I grew up in Manhattan, Kansas. I went to school in Lawrence, Kansas, where I'm at now. Um, and that's if I were like I do not think that I would have it in me to return to Manhattan, Kansas. That would be a different ability to wrestle with some demons that I don't know if I'm interested in spending my life doing that.
Yeah. It's interesting to hear you. The Oz thing is makes sense, but
And gay and like
so
there's so many things about it.
But there's something to the something very emotional to and hard to the idea of, was it real? What just happened to me? And there's something to knowing you for the brief end times that I knew you in the city, to how intense you were living, that, and I think we even talked about this in our moments together, where it's like, how can you really be totally in your body, totally living your time when you're working so hard and you are just, it's almost like, how can you feel the realness of your life if you're not, you don't even have a second to be in it? Like, just that element of the journey. And so to hear you talk about it like that, it makes sense. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's very disorienting. And like, and it's like I know the work that needs to be done to make shit happen. It's not like I could just stop taking care of stuff that needed to be taken care of. You know, I needed help, I needed support. It didn't come quickly enough. But you know, the thing that I will say is a lot of projects that I started and probably worked to a point where I couldn't sustain on my own, I wasn't able to ask other people like, do you want this?
Hmm.
Would you take care of it?
Yeah.
And now they can continue. And I think so that's true of Salon. Jillian Jatan and Matthew and Tosi are managing Salon now, which was a project that I started in 2013 or 14. It's updated on my website. And we did it monthly for a very long time, which was insane. And then it became less regular, at least yearly, sometimes quarterly, because my collaborator Katrin had moved to Pittsburgh. But that's a thing that I was like, you want this? I'll
Yeah.
tell you everything that you might want to know, and I will trust you to make something new out of it. And Tarot Bang also continuing without me, started that in 2016. Uh, and I'm excited to see how it evolves.
Yeah.
Um, and it has both of those things have support now in ways that they didn't when I started.
Hmm.
So that's cool. So I'm actually giving something to somebody where it's not just like a weight around their necks,
Yeah.
but something where they might be able to actually make it even more.
Yeah.
And then the brick and exponential, um, both 501(c)(3)s, both uh, started out with very little and now have more to offer.
Hmm.
So it's easier to ask people to help out when you can offer them something to do it. And for so long, it's just like I had nothing to offer, you know,
And then you built it.
and
A
then I
lot
built
of
it.
it. A lot of
And
it.
then now other people can do stuff with this
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. That's so much. It's so much. You did so much. And also, we'll just note that because people will maybe see this who have no idea about anything and don't know you. And to hear you talk about running the brick and running all of the shows and Ox, that you also had a job.
Yeah.
Like, you also had an additional job that you worked on top of a very big job, which is
Yeah. Well, job and also the one thing that I haven't handed to somebody else is my theater company, Title Point,
kind
which
of,
I started in 2006. And Title Point got to do stuff this past month, which felt so good. And we're figuring out how to like do stuff now that we're all older. A lot of us live in different places. A lot of people have kids now. But to do something together, uh, oh, was like one of the many highlights of the past month. And that baby's mine. Title Point, like, is not. I did not build up the sustainability of that to give to somebody else. That's a thing that is just like when I die, it dies. But the other things were not like that,
Hmm.
so those things can be shepherded by other people. But yeah, then I also always had a full-time job that was not running these spaces, mostly just to pay my rent, barely. There are times that I had jobs that paid me better, but they took away more of my ability to do these things that I truly cared about. Um, Primarily working for Spanish corporate lawyers on the Upper East Side. Uh, and I had to wear like corporate casual clothing.
No
I had
caftans.
no caftans. I had to go to 55th and Lex every single day during rush hours. Um, and I did that for almost 2 years. And it was like the only time I've really had like benefits and uh like any of that stuff that like other people sort of complain about their benefits being bad. I'm like, at least you have benefits.
Mm,
And I know it's like I shouldn't be like those people should totally get to complain and vent about how bad their benefits are. But as a person who's lived most of my life without any, I'm like, it'd be cool to
yeah.
have. Um and yeah, but I've never had the option of not having a job. And this sort of circles back to a previous question of like, what is the theater industry?
Yeah.
Um, and I don't really feel like I'm a part of it. I'm not doing regional theater. I don't have any real interest in spending my time that way. I'm glad that it exists. I'm glad that there are things that get out there and like it's the same. It's like publishing. It's like record labels. It's like those things are necessary to get art to have a further reach.
Hmm.
Um, but that's not really what I'm interested in
Hmm.
spending my time on. And our stuff I think has a further reach, but over a more expansive amount of time, you know. It's not immediate.
And okay, I have two other questions after this rambling thing that is gonna come out of me.
Cool.
And I say this because I think about it and I have sort of shame around this thought, but title point is like your people, right? Your people that you make work with. That's like your family maker family. Um, and did you ever did you ever have goals or dreams that were like, I want to be famous. I want to make money out of this art, or I want to enter a pipeline like this? Slash, was that it? Slash, was the dream, I want to be able to keep doing this art with the people that I love sustainably, and life happens. But like, did you or do you notice that other people around you, like, did you have those specific things in mind?
I think that it it has to change
Because a
over
lot of
time.
people do. Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, I find that I'm still open to but suspect of people who are interested in fame.
Mm,
Because I think that like the best artists are not famous.
mm.
And best according to me, like in my
Your
opinions,
values.
but also historically, like you imagine all of the novels that I sometimes I get really sad about like thinking about the novels that I'll never read because somebody didn't have access to being published. Um, and I've read novels that I fucking love, but I know that those would be like minor masterpieces next to these other things. And it's just about access.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so like, so I don't think that fame is bad. There are a lot of famous people that I love. Channing, if you're out there. Oh,
Show Channing.
love you. Uh, and I say that with like the entire depth of my being. So I don't
Channing
think that,
Tatum, Channing Tatum, just to be
yeah.
clear, just in case no one understands. Okay,
I
keep
feel
going.
like he's a one namer though, just like the other famous one namers. Um, but Yeah, the goal of fame, I think, is a sort of vile thing,
Mhm.
especially if you maintain it throughout your life. Because I get it. When I was little, I wanted to do things that famous people were doing. I don't know if I wanted to be famous, but I wanted to host the Oscars after I saw Whoopi Goldberg do it when I was in third grade.
Amazing.
Um, I wanted to play every role that Christopher Lloyd played. Every time I saw any movie or TV show that he was in, I was like, I want
I
to do
could see
that.
that. I could totally see that.
And so there are things where when you see someone doing something that helps you understand yourself,
Yeah.
when you're in that period of building your identity. I wanted to be a mystery writer because I loved Sherlock Holmes, and Mary Downing Hahn and Stephen King. Like I wanted to, so I was seeing people doing something that resonated with me for a variety of reasons, and then I wanted to do that too. I remember seeing this actress, Kate Norris, who I don't know what she's doing now, but hopefully acting. But she, when I was in eighth grade, played Richard the Third and in Richard the Third and Helena in Midsummer and Froth and Measure for Measure with this touring Shakespeare company. And I was like, I want to do that. So there are things that I saw that I was like, this helps me understand myself. Um, but I didn't understand what it was to be those people or to have the
Hmm.
things they had or not
Yeah.
have the things that they didn't have. Um, so it wasn't really about wanting to be known. It was sort of about relating to it really heavily. And then as you start to like more fully understand who you are, comprised of all of your influences, but also living with yourself every single day, and surviving, there's also a period where it's like, I don't think I'm going to live.
Yeah.
If I hadn't lived past various ages, then I wouldn't be like then it would have cut off at a certain point, maybe before I had like started to take my sense of identity combined with all of these influences, combined with my experiences, and start to uh have new priority, not
Mm.
really new priorities, but it's like, yeah, my priorities as a young person were to like absorb, um to try things, I guess, to like go through pain and torment and fall in love and do school and like, different priorities than an adult person living on their own.
Hmm.
And that could have also started earlier.
Yeah.
Um, but for me, that was my experience. And so I think uh but that's the relationship to fame is I don't think that there's ever a moment where I was like, I want to be famous. I just saw people doing things that I also wanted to do, that I related to. Um, and then also like recognition feels nice. Um,
Hmm.
but I think it's also like really dangerous, like in the same way that nostalgia feels nice but is dangerous, love feels nice but is dangerous. Like a lot of the things that feel best also are pretty dangerous things. So I don't I don't think that recognition is bad.
Hmm.
But I think that it can be, like many things, a thing that sort of can destroy the artistic impulse, and um it can sort of water it down, smooth it out, make it uh sort of dull.
Yeah. Which kind of seems like there's an aspect of what you value that goes into the brick that went into ox that was all about valuing kind of the opposite of that. Like valuing the, I don't want to say roughness, but like what happens outside of the track towards guaranteed clarity. Like just
Yeah. And so a few of the things there is like, what path do you actually want to be on? If you want to be on a career path, um, probably the brick is not the right place for you.
Mhm.
Um, but I mean, you could like those paths can align for a while. Um,
Worse.
but like if you're on an art path, if there's something else motivating you, the brick is probably, at least when I was there, a better place for you. Um, and yeah, like career path is so different than art path. And
That's
sometimes,
that's so
sometimes they're the
interesting.
same.
I never thought about that. My whole life, I never thought about that. I never thought that there was a difference. And that's fucked me, I think, in some ways. Only
Because
because
we
I
want to
didn't
think that they're the
know.
same,
I
but they're
thought
not
they
the
were.
same.
I
And they
thought
could
they
be
were.
some paths have bikes and cars.
Yes.
Some paths have
Yeah.
careers at art,
Yeah.
but they're not the same path.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just got to pull over and really like lose your shit laughing,
Yeah.
and then
Yes.
decide which path you want to be on.
Yeah.
Um, and and that neither path is wrong, but they're just not, the requirements aren't the same. The
Yeah.
people on them are not the same. The reasons you're on them are not the same. Like it's wild.
Yeah. And the values are not the same. And I think that's what I felt. And I think that's what makes different artistic communities feel differently because you can feel what path you're on when you're in those different communities that cater to different things, right? Different needs for different tracks or getting on that metaphor. But I think that's true. I think that makes a lot of sense. And it's like that's a bit hard. It's a bit of a hard thing.
Yeah. Well, especially if like, I mean, if it forces you to reckon with a long held belief,
Hmm.
that's hard.
Hmm.
Like it's like feeling like you've been lied to,
Hmm.
and that's hard. And a lot of us
Hmm.
have been lied to
Yeah.
about art
Yeah.
and career.
Yeah.
Uh, and sometimes it's an unintentional lie too. It's not like somebody is setting out to tell you
Yeah.
something that's not true.
Yeah.
But you hear it the way that you need to hear it in order to
Yeah.
move forward. Um, and yeah, it can be, but when you pull over and laugh really hard about it and then decide where you want to go, it's nice.
I It's very beautiful. And I think I'm gonna take it to a place. I think there's something about the art career lie that's very New York City and that's very Wizard of Ozzy and that I think I've experienced multiple times with my relationship to New York, which is a similar kind of like, I want it to be this, I thought it was this. And then I realize that I'm a part of a different game. It's like, how do you know you're on the wrong track until it's like I couldn't have known a lot of these things about who I wanted to be until I saw it for myself because not only do people not tell you, but like people don't know and we don't talk about a lot of the truths. Like, so it's a weird, like you meet the wizard, but like over and over again.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like, ah,
Well, it is sort of like the people that you meet along the way, right? Because all of the people that Dorothy met were also like, we got to go see the wizard.
yes,
Like
exactly.
this is the thing. And they all agreed on that. And then, the reveal is that they had it inside of them all along, and it's just like, but why didn't somebody tell me before I went all the way down this
I
fucking
know.
yellow road? You know, like I had to
Like,
have that
haven't other
baby.
people been here?
Couldn't I have started earlier so that I could
Yeah.
have done it in my younger body with better
Yeah.
knees?
Yeah.
Um, but so I think that's where uh those moments of intersecting with people can be really important, and it doesn't really matter what age. Like there are a lot of people that I think started to create those sort of cracks in my brain that allowed me to see and think in different ways from a young age. And they still couldn't control my journey. They couldn't make it better for me or easier for me or tell me what to do. because they didn't know. And also, their experience was going to be inherently different than mine in a variety of ways. And so it's like they could give me solid advice, of which I've had a lot. And I've also had terrible advice.
Yeah.
And I've had very harmful people. But I've had people that I think, yeah, did that. But I hope to keep having revelations about why I exist and what we're doing here for the rest of my life. I hope it doesn't end now. Um, but I also feel grateful to have, I think, a responsible relationship to myself in regards to uh expectations and what I think success is. I guess that's
Yeah.
more of it, is like
Yeah.
what I think success is. I feel good about how I feel right now, where I've come.
So I don't know if this is aligned with the success question, but I wrote, I would like to know what your dream is. Like I want to know, and again, I guess this would encompass realistic expectations, quote unquote, but what do you want? And I guess what do you want in the sort of like what if scenario of like what if things could just work out how you wanted? What do you want? Take your
Wow.
time. Take your time with this. Sit with it.
Um, like with everything,
Hmm.
they're different. They're all of my wants are related, but also can be extracted from each other. Um, I want to find a way to live not extravagantly, but without fear, financially. Um, and I'm happy to work for it. I think I've proven that over time. But yeah, the older I get, I'm like, uh I need to spend less time in financial fear,
Hmm.
in order to do the other things that I want to do.
Hmm.
Um, so that has to become a little bit of a priority.
Hmm.
It's still not my main priority. If it was, then I would like go, I could figure out how to do that, but it is not my only priority, but it is
Yeah, and I know you've been offered. There have been offers that could have compensated you in ways that would have been more secure, but didn't totally align with who you were.
yeah. And I don't feel bad about not taking those offers, because the one thing I do know is that I have to live with myself every day.
Yeah.
And I know what that's like. And it's no picnic if I'm not doing things that are aligned with my ethics and my more deeply held beliefs. Um, I can't do it. Um, so I don't want to take a job I couldn't do, and that would be harmful to me.
Hmm.
Um, and if I was going to do that, then I would just go do something totally outside of the arts. But so I'd like to do something that is aligned with the other things that I care about. But I'll never be bored. That's the thing that I say. Like the IT person who's doing their best to help me with a really annoying computer issue. They were running late and they were so apologetic, and I was like, oh, don't worry, I will always have a list of things to do, uh, a pile of books to read, like list of ideas that I want to like start to write out. Like I'll never be bored. And so I'm grateful for that. But what I want to do, those are some things that, I'm ready. I'm ready to walk through the doors when they appear.
I mean, it sounds like you already are. It sounds like you are walking through them.
I'm just
It sounds
walking
like you've
in
never
the door.
stopped.
it's only doors, no rooms. Oh,
Yeah, well, but you will, I feel like you'll find the rooms because you're going slower.
yeah. Yeah, I can look for the portals. I have
Portals,
the
exactly. And
portals.
like the portals, because it's like you gotta like be with you for like in the quiet time with you, there's portals. I feel like New York is weird because it like makes you think that there's portals everywhere and that you're gonna miss portals if you're not always
Mhm.
running around to the portals. But sometimes that makes you miss like the ultimate portal, which is like your fucking self.
The ultimate portal.
I mean, I have just a final thing that I wanted to say because it's a lot of feelings. I guess I just wanted to ask you about family because I think that I don't know you that well, but I have met your parents and I know that your sister and your niece mean a lot to you and I know that your family means a lot to you. And I know that people have really different relationships to their families. Um and I know that coming home you're spending more time with your parents, I guess, although you're farther from your sister.
So my sister's here, my brother's
Oh, your
upstate.
brother was upstate. Okay.
Mhm.
So it's like a different geography with
Yeah.
family now. But I guess I wanted to ask you how that felt and like just what that means overall for you because it's kind of like a coming home thing and it's a new home. So I don't know if that's like a nice way to just kind of
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot there as well. So my brother and sister and I, we'll start there. Uh, I've always been very close to my brother, and my sister and I got closer as adults, even though we didn't live in the same place. Um, and that's also the benefit of living a little bit longer and growing up and forgiving and uh, all sorts of things. But those things are not a given, you know. Like if my sister and I had grown in the ways that we were growing as we were younger, we would not be friends now.
Mhm.
Um, but my brother and I were always really close, and I love his kids so much. Um, and yeah, and they live upstate, so that sort of bums me out to not be close to them, but also I do not want to live upstate. No, thank you. And I have a lot of friends upstate, bless. But like for me, that's not the vibe right now. I'd rather be in New York or Lawrence.
Mhm.
City or college town.
Mhm.
Lawrence has a lot of cool stuff. It's sort of a magical art town. It's like where Burroughs lived. It's like
Cool.
cool bands come through here. It's an interesting place. But yeah, my parents and my sister and her husband and her son are here in Lawrence. And yeah, it's a really special time to get to spend time with them. Like I'd always return to visit. But I don't think in any of our minds we thought I'd ever come back here. So that feels a little bit like a portal, um, and like a special period of time that
Mhm.
just can only exist right now and may never have existed, but it does.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to be really grateful for that. And I get frustrated with stuff. And there are things that are hard about it for me, but mostly it's wonderful and I love them. And yeah, it's nice to be around them. But I also know it's sort of a weird thing. I think that's why Ryan and I connected so much, is he's very close to his parents. But he always was. He was always sort of the like uh favored little king child of Elyria, Ohio. And I was always like I was not so favored growing up, but
In your
um
family, you mean?
yeah, I mean, I was definitely what, like, hands down, people would be like, yeah, black sheep is a good term. Um, and I caused them a lot of grief in their communities because of how, like, who I am and how I existed in the world. But it's sort of miraculous that we're able to move through all of that and continue to grow as people. They grew up in really conservative Christian households. And the way that they were was a result of their upbringing. So, yeah, there are a lot of people that they're friends with, or used to be friends with, that would not treat me the same way. Oh, Vanessa, what'd you do to me?
I know, I'm sorry.
But yeah, it's very emotional and very lucky. And
And
it's not a normal thing at all. So I feel like I'm very happy to be here and to have this time with them, in a real way that's not just a visit.
that's a good portal.
Oh, yeah, it's a really good portal.
Yeah, that's a really good portal. That's a portal of realness, of too much of real realness.
Oh, heavy realness. Yeah, my astrologer, Jamie, so check out her books and let me know when you
Yeah,
can do it.
yeah.
Um, but she said right before I left that uh, I would definitely uh am a more emotional well, I'm not emotional. Like I can hold my shit together. But she was like that it's a strength. It's not a weakness. And I think that's one of those people sort of cracking your brain in a way where I'd always viewed emotion as a weakness that I should try to suppress. Uh and sometimes it is not appropriate to cry. Probably on this it's not even that appropriate to
No,
cry,
it's
but
so appropriate. I've been crying. I already cried. I was crying like 10 minutes before getting on this Zoom. Not
oh,
joking.
great. Great. I think it's okay. And yeah, and it's definitely not a weakness, but it's hard to when you think that it's a weakness your whole life, there's a lot of undoing there. So grateful for my astrologer, Jamie Wright at Moon Missives.
Yeah, shout out the Alp. I'll plug Jamie. And I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, and to grow up, um, like what you were saying just about causing your family grief or causing your parents grief. I mean, you're such a beautiful person, to like view yourself also as like a grief causer it's a hard thing to come back to and to heal from that.
Yeah, that's like I think that having to really sit with yourself in any iteration is more difficult than people that's why we distract ourselves so much. But yeah, I'm happy to have the opportunity to do that. And I think if I can do that, then there are other things that I'll be capable of.
100%. That's beautiful.
Uh,
Of course.